a tad early here.
Uh,
San Diego, West Coast time, but
Appreciate
that,
you getting up early.
no problem. What I need is some of those Starbucks that you guys have, but I'll get that
Mm,
afterwards.
smells so good. You just wish you had some.
Me
Oh,
too.
goodness. Well, usually we like to just jump in so we don't lose any good nuggets, if that's okay with you.
Go for it.
All right. And Remuzzi is your last name, right? That's how you say it?
It's Remuzzi. It rhymes with
Remuzzi.
fuzzy.
Uh, Remuzzi. Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Thanks for that. I don't want to screw that up. All right.
No, 99% of all people that see it go Remuzzi, so that's normal.
Damn it. I wanted to be the abnormal. Awesome. Well, let's get it going. Brett, we ready? All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Empowering Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Glenn Harper.
I'm Julie Smith.
What's going on, Julie?
We both have Starbucks, so we're back
Back
on it
on.
today.
Thought we were giving it up.
Yeah, that didn't last very
No, it
long.
didn't last it. Well, the good news today, we got a great guest today, and I'm betting he wish has a Starbucks as he's over on the West Coast, and it's bright and early over there. It's we have a great treat today. Matt Remuzzi, owner, founder of CapForge's Bookkeeping and more. How great is it that we have another entrepreneur who's a moonlighting as a bean counter? His mission is to make easy to read, timely financial statements so clients can have the data needed to make financial decisions with their businesses. His passion is contagious, as his mantra of "I am Matt and I love accounting" brings a tear to my eye. So thanks, Matt, for being on our show.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
He's wondering where your 10 key is. Like, as you answer questions, Glenn has this really bad habit of like he can't answer a question without touching the 10 key in some way, shape, or form. So
Well, I will be the first to admit I am not an accountant. I the closest I got to
Sacrilege.
accounting was I got my MBA. So, we had some accounting classes there, and I did get my enrolled agent. I went through that process, took the test, but I will be the first to admit I am an entrepreneur. I've owned lots of businesses. This iteration is just the latest and greatest of things I've gotten involved in, but I am not the person to be touching your books or tax returns.
well, I can't wait to hear how this journey shakes
The,
out
the,
because Glenn's gonna hold out hope that maybe someday I'll be in your same boat, I think.
there's a chance here. No, I can't comprehend the fact. I thought for sure that you were going to be a hardcore bean counter. Now, I'm all depressed now. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I'm totally kidding. It's all good. Um, it's funny, when we get our guests on a show, we just try to get to know them a little bit and just have a little fun until we delve into the journey and such. And, Southern California, you do have a bit of a surfer dude accent. Have you been refining that over the years? Is that something you just picked up lately?
Yeah, no, I think it's probably because I do surf.
Mhm.
So, out in the water with all those guys, you can't help but, kind of blending in, right?
You want to fit in. I hear you're from Westlake Village, California. It's an inner city suburb, has a population of 8,029 people. Sits just east of Hidden Valley. Is that where the ranch dressing comes from? Is that the valley?
I think that is. I think
That's
that's
crazy.
where Thousand Oaks, Thousand Island, Thousand Oaks dressing, right? Yeah, I'm not sure actually. They didn't get me involved in that family business, but
Yeah, you missed out. So yeah, it sounds like you went to a smaller school, obviously. And how'd that was that different when you jumped into go to college and stuff, or was the small school your kind of cup of tea?
It no, it was fine. It was good. There was actually a lot of people who lived in our neighborhood, had jobs in San Fernando Valley and LA proper. A lot of folks actually from the movie and film industry. So it was a smaller town, but we were definitely solidly upper middle class. So, got a good education there. And then I went to University of California, San Diego for college, and then subsequently went to San Diego State University for my MBA, which had an entrepreneurship track, which is why I really wanted to go there. Always knew I wanted to have my own thing. I just never knew what it was going to be. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go to the entrepreneurship program and that'll help me figure it out. It didn't, but it gave me a good background.
Why did you have to go so far away to school? It was what, like 70 miles away? Why didn't you travel far, far around the world? Or you just want to stay local?
Well, in-state tuition played a role in that decision, but also, if you've been to San Diego, it's a pretty tough place to not fall in love with.
Yeah.
And once I got down here, I never left.
Do you think that what was your undergrad degree in?
Psychology.
Like, oh, Jesus. Okay. That's a toughie there. Are you analyzing us right now? It's going to get a lot of
Well, I didn't
material.
want to say anything, but yeah, I
Just
feel
your
like,
body language.
Elaborate. It's all good. No, it's when you said you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, is that something that your parents did? Did you have an uncle? Did you have friends? Like, how did you just know what that even was?
No, I honestly think it skipped a generation. My grandfather, who had on my father's side, who passed away before I was even born, he was somebody who owned lots of different businesses over the course of his life. And then my father was an engineer. He only had two jobs his entire life, 20 years at one company, 24 years at another company. And he always told me, entrepreneurship is for, you know, that's a weekend gig. Get a real job, get benefits, a steady paycheck, and then you can mess around with that hobby on the weekends. But I always just knew I would be a lousy employee, and I really wanted to sink or swim on my own merits. It's like, even I was always having business ideas. I always like sports. Like, I like track and tennis, where if I won, I won. If I lost, I lost. But it wasn't like I had a good game, but the team lost. That kind of stuff always drove me nuts. So I think it was just hardwired from the beginning that, this was my path. I just didn't know what specifically, but I knew it would be something.
I'm just curious, what defines making a lousy employee? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, because I was we'd be in meetings and I would say, hey, I have an idea on how we could make things better. And it's listen. And then they go, well, I don't know about that. And then I'd say, but I have another idea. And then he'd go, shut up, Matt. All right. Just, stop talking in the meetings. But it was so frustrating because, I felt like I could make a contribution. I could help overall make things better. And nobody wanted to hear it. So I got to just, yeah, I'm not cut out for this. I need, even if my ideas are bad, I need to be able to at least try them out instead of being shut down before I could even, get the data.
Yeah, I think for me it was I didn't like people telling me what to do. I just
Mhm.
didn't like that, and I'm like, well, F you, I'm not doing that. And then that one song came out where I won't do what you tell me. It was the greatest song ever. And like, I'm not doing that. And it was part of the thing where, again, stupid people tell you what to do, but you get to at least choose. Do you want to engage or not engage that, which is kind of nice. And again, to your point, it's funny how you probably made an iteration, and Julie's going to chime in on this because I know she loves this part. But like you said, you want to do the individual sport where you are successful based on what you do. But at some point, when you're an entrepreneur, you got to build a team, right?
Absolutely.
And so that revelation, when that hit you, was that like a 2x4 to the bridge of your nose, or was that just something that just slowly happened?
No, I mean, it wasn't that I was against working with other people. And obviously, you hit a ceiling pretty quick as a one-man business. But I didn't want to have to enforce stupid rules or, do things that I didn't feel like made a lot of sense. So I had no problem, uh, you know, recruiting people to be part of the team and being a team leader. I just didn't want to have to pass down rules that other people. I mean, one of the turning points for me, although it wasn't where I started being an entrepreneur finally, but I was working as a restaurant manager, and the district manager above me hired two new assistant managers. And I was then told that I had to let one of my assistant managers go to make room for these new hires that she shouldn't have hired in the first place. So I was literally told to fire somebody, one of my two assistant managers, both of whom were excellent, who I'd kind of, trained up and gotten to where, and we were, at that point we'd gotten store of the quarter in a 25 store system. And, I'm being told to fire somebody who didn't deserve to be fired because of someone else's poor decision making and planning. And I just broke it. I said, if you make me fire this person, not only am I not going to do it, but I'm going to quit. And she said, well, okay, then I'm going to fire them. And then I quit. And then I got calls from, the C-suites. Hey, you're one of our best. Can you come back? I said, no, I'm not working at a place where I'm told to do something I know is wrong, and forget it. And, so it was just one of those things, like, I'm not doing it. So that's why I say, I guess I'm a bad employee in the sense of other people, might have thought, hey, that wasn't a good decision. You're not following the rules and whatever, but I just couldn't do it.
We have some good authority that the real reason why that ended is because you didn't like Hawaiian Shirt Friday.
Well, I mean, there was that too. Yes.
Right. Because that was usually the straw that breaks people's back because they don't have a good Hawaiian shirt. And that's very important to have. Um, when all of a sudden, you grew up in, Southern California, then you did school there, and then you ended up in Carlsbad as your home base. Like you never really went far from home. Did you just want to stay close to Legoland? I mean, I'm trying to figure out why you never left it. You don't like the seasons and, snow and
Yeah, I mean, I love to travel. I've actually been to 55 countries at this
wow.
point. So I love to go and see other places. I think it's a great way to get new perspectives and see how other people do things. But again, I just haven't found a better place to come back home to than here in Carlsbad. And yeah, I'm not a fan of shoveling snow or cold weather.
I just don't know if we can be friends or not. This is crazy.
Well, I just think I'd want to go join him. You can stay here with
Yeah,
the
I know.
cold.
It's funny. Southern California is just an amazing place. It's just hard to comprehend that, with all the things that happen in California, that people would stay at the same time. Why would you ever leave at the same time? So you've got to be wrestling with this constantly. But I think you probably found a community, an area where it's probably a normal place. It's not like what you see on TV, and you guys can thrive there. I'd imagine that's the situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, Carlsbad, it feels like a small town. And San Diego still, I mean, it's grown up a lot since I got here first, but it's not like LA at all. LA is a big, crowded, noisy, polluted place. San Diego still has much more of a small town feel. And Carlsbad within San Diego is a great place to live and grow up and raise a family. And so, yeah, I'd have a hard time leaving. But again, I'd love to go and visit other places. I just want to come back here.
Bismarck, North Dakota in January is supposed to be really hopping. You want to be there.
Oh my gosh. So when you were growing up, take us back. Did you cut grass? Did you sell rocks that you painted? When was the first time you were like, oh, I'm going to make a lousy employee. I'm really good at doing this on my own.
Well, I wasn't good at doing it on my own. I mean, I started delivering newspapers, which, it's not even a thing anymore. But when I was 12, I started doing that. And I always had I was going to paint t-shirts and sell candy at school. And, I tried a lot of different things, but nothing ever really took off. I didn't have the right idea and the right motivation at the time to really do it. It wasn't until after the MBA program, I got a job as a small business consultant at a consulting firm. And I got hired in May of 2000 and laid off in October of 2000. They were one of those companies that added .com to their name and got some money, and the money ran out. And it turns out that wasn't really, adding .com to your name wasn't really enough to run to base a business around. But at that point, I knew there were still people out there that needed the service. So I thought, well, I'll work as an independent consultant, until I have to go get a real job again. But there was enough people out there that needed it, and it was enough of a runway for me that was the last time I ever worked for anybody, was October of 2000. So I needed something to do that I could do that would be sustainable. And when I was 12 and 14 and 16, I didn't have the ability to make it work. But
it's funny when we have our guests on the show, the entrepreneur mind spirit. It's just, it's just a different mindset and how we think about things. And when that first quote real job didn't happen out of college, was it, and again, I'm just curious, and you may not even thought about it, but at the time we were like, oh my God, that didn't work out. I got to do the side hustle. Oh, maybe my dad was right. Maybe I should just get a real job. And you're like, no, wait, I can't do that. No, I want to do this thing. Did you have that arm wrestling competition going on in your head or what?
It was really just cash flow, right? If I
Okay.
can put enough money in the bank every month to not have to get a job, then I'm happy. And obviously you want to grow it and, build more of a cushion and get it sustainable. But I was not out with the resume, trying with a backup plan. As long as there was enough money in the bank to pay the rent and feed myself, I was going for it. I felt like this was as good a chance of any. If it didn't work out, I'd borrow some money from my parents and go get a job. But I was going to run the bank down to the last dollars to try it.
It's, I guess, the point to that would be, as listeners, is that you were going to give it your best shot before immediately you had an obstacle. You didn't quit. You're like, well, I'm going to just keep working this through and keep going. Because imagine if you would have just said, oh my God, this didn't work out, I guess I got a real job. Where would you be today? Right. So taking it that extra step is probably a good thing that you did. Right. I mean, look at you now.
Exactly. Yeah. Persistence is the number one trait of any entrepreneur, I think. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have gone to the best schools. You don't have to have a ton of money behind you. You just have to not quit. And eventually, as long as you're able to still pivot, right? You don't give up, but that doesn't necessarily mean you just keep doing the same wrong thing over and over. You got to learn that learn from your experience and pivot as you need to, but you just don't quit. I think success is inevitable at that point.
So you're running or you're doing this business consulting. It's your first stab at this entrepreneurial journey. Walk me through it. What does it look like? Do you build a team? And then where do you go from there? What makes you have to pivot?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, the writing business plans was a good gig because it paid pretty well. I was good at writing and I'd had enough experience putting financials and projections together and writing plans. The real struggle I had with it was even from the early days, people would come to me and say, I have a plan that I'm going to put, I'm going to boil the ocean basically. And I'll pay you $10,000 to write the plan that proves I can boil the ocean. I go, I know you can't boil the ocean. Do I take the money and write the plan anyway? Or do I tell you this is a poor idea, think of something else, but then I'm out of a job. So I struggled with that a bit. So what I pivoted to was I built some software that would let people write their own plans and do their own financial projections. Even if you didn't have any accounting experience, you could put together projections, would create a P&L and a balance sheet and a cash flow statement for you and a template to write your business plan and kind of how to do the research and do your citations and build a pitch deck. And then I sold that software. And that way I figured if you want to write a boil the ocean plan, go for it. You paid me for the template, but your plan is your own. So I did that for a while. And that was in the early days where in Google, you could put in business plan and you'd be at the top of the results just by sort of stuffing your website with the right keywords. And so I got a lot of traffic and did a good volume of business. But I could already see that the writing on the wall there, that wasn't going to last. So as it turned out, there was a catering company that came up for sale. And I thought, well, I've got all this restaurant experience. I'm going to buy the catering company to diversify my income, which I did. I bought this catering company from this brother and sister who were fighting like cats and dogs. And they were not running the business well, but it was a good business. So I ran that for 4 years and turned it around and sold it for a nice profit. And I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to become a business broker. And then I'm going to find my next acquisition. I'll be in the perfect position to get these businesses before they even list. I'll buy the ones I like and I'll sell the ones I don't like. So for 4 years, I did that. I sold 36 businesses. I never bought one. I could never find one that I thought was any good that I wanted. But what I kept seeing was every time I'd go to a business, I'd say, okay, let's figure out how much this thing is worth. Let's take a look at the books. And they go, oh, the books. Yeah, that's a sad story. They're 6 months behind or they're all wrong or Uncle Jim does them, but I don't think he really knows what he's doing. Or, there was always a story about why they were such a disaster. So I thought, okay, maybe the opportunity here, instead of buying a business, maybe the opportunity is go into the small business bookkeeping world because there seems to be a huge demand for quality books and a very small supply of quality bookkeepers. And that's what I did in January 2012. And, here we are, 1,200 clients, 70 employees later, clients, in every state in the US. And, it turned out to be hugely successful. But at the time, I just thought, oh, maybe this is an opportunity. We'll pivot once again and see what happens.
So knowing that you don't do bookkeeping and accounting, did you do the first bookkeeping? Or did you hire somebody right away?
No, so I took some refresher classes on QuickBooks because I'd done my own for some of the time with the catering business. And when I had the software business, I'd done my own. So I took some refresher classes on QuickBooks and I knew I could, get it done well enough. But within 6 months, I had enough client base built up that I leased an office and I hired the first person. And I said, okay, great. You do all of the bookkeeping and I'll go find more clients. And so we kind of built it from there. And I haven't really touched any books personally in 10 years, but that's okay because my strength is going and talking to small business owners. All those years of business brokering really gave me a great leg up on how to talk to small business owners. And what would happen so often is we'd talk and meet them. I'd say, hey, great business you've got here. What are your plans? What are your goals? What do you think is, your strengths and weaknesses? How can we help? we talked for 45 minutes because they'd unload to me because no, their, spouses didn't want to hear about it. Friends didn't want to hear about it. Employees certainly are not going to talk to them about stuff. So they'd talk to me. And after 45 minutes, they go, oh, I should really get back to, you called originally about bookkeeping, and they go, oh, you're hired. I don't, we don't even need, we don't even need to talk about that. I already know I like you because you're not like a typical accountant, which worked to my favor.
You know what's funny is we're in the same business, and it's really the numbers are what the numbers are. There were more we wear a psychiatrist hat, psychologist hat, and that's we morphed into it as accountants. If you go into that role, you really get a good rapport with your clients, see what they really want because they'll unload on you. You had it a whole different way. You had the shrink degree, then you get your MBA to know some things, then you know your own books, then you goes back around. You did it the opposite way of a normal accountant would do it, but you don't even want to be an accountant. But again, it's about that relationship with your clients that you have. And I would imagine we have the same success that you have at that is just getting to know your clients, see what they really want and what they're needing, and just be there for them because they have nobody to talk to. So now you get to use your psychology degree, you get to use your MBA, and you get to use your entrepreneurial thing. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it really, all my previous experience kind of came together to make me really well suited for this role. Plus, I mean, all the business brokering experience too, I could bring that. Like if you're thinking about selling your business down the road, I can tell you right now, things that buyers care about and things that you're doing now that hurt your business, like commingling it with your other personal stuff and your other, side hustle of Airbnb. And let's clean this up and make it really presentable to a buyer and maximize the value. And they go, oh, I had no idea. I know you didn't, but let's, now that let's work on this. If you want to, or a lot of people don't even realize their business has value. Right. So let's talk about what is your future plans? Like, well, I don't know. I guess I'll just hand it off to my kids. Well, your kids don't want it. Or I guess I'll just close it down. Close it down. This thing could, you could sell this for $1 million. So let's think about this a different way. And they really appreciate, that advisory piece is what they value. Here's your P&L and balance sheet. They don't, I don't even know what this is. So.
Yeah, nobody can read that. Even the accountants can't read it really. But do they just really want to know what they owe and how much they probably made? And other than that, that's really about what's next. And again, just having that relationship is where it's at. Do you feel like, do you have like a dream client that you would want, or is it just you just like people that need help and you want to help them? Is that was that what motivates you?
Yeah, I mean, we'll take anybody that's a good fit as far as we can do their outsourced services for them. But I like to work with people who are open and coachable and, are asking for advice, right? Sometimes I'm sure you guys run into all the same client types we do, right? There's a few people who imagine they know it all. Usually they're the ones that know the very least about anything, but they want to tell you how to do stuff. Okay. And then, they're all the way to the opposite end, the people who just want to call every 15 minutes and ask you, is it okay if I buy the Starbucks? Like, well, come on. We're doing your accounting. I'm not your parent, right? But those in-between people who are kind of looking for, look, I think I have a good business, but how can I make it better? What should I be thinking about? How could I grow it? And, I love working with folks that want to, do better with their business. And I can help them out with some of my experience and advice.
So it sounds like you were able to build a pretty big team, and it sounds like your team's, spread amongst the United States, per se. What do you think? I think Glenn and I run into this, and I think the industry, and I even think any business can relate. How are you finding talent and retaining that talent to ensure that the same level of service is given by each person as you would, right? I think that's really hard as an entrepreneur.
It definitely is. One of the best things I had when I first started after college, going into restaurant management, because psychology wasn't really a thing I wanted to do and certainly wasn't any jobs open. I had some really good mentors early on in management. And I just decided my philosophy was going to be, I wouldn't want to work anywhere that I wouldn't want to work. Right. So I wanted to treat people fairly and value them and appreciate them and set clear expectations of what I wanted them to do and really lay everything out. Right. This is how I want you to write emails. I want there to be a greeting and an ending, and I, put some personality into it. and be a human when you interact with people. And we really try to hire people who not just have the accounting skills we're looking for. That's really secondary. It's the customer service first and the personality that we aim for. And so even our job ads, all of which I've written, they don't sound like the typical job ad, right? Because if you imagine you're looking for an accounting job and you read through 50 or 100 job descriptions, and they're all kind of bullet points of know this, know that, so many years of this and that, but there's no personality. And then they get to ours and they go, wow, this looks like it was written by a person. And, then you visit our website and there's a picture of our team, and, you can see me on podcasts and, videos and all kinds of stuff. And look, oh, it just seems like a cool place to work. Like people are valued there and respected. And, we've had a lot of our employees for a long time. I think that comes through in the job ad and the interviews we do and how we treat people and talk to people. And I think that's what helps us. That's as good of a recruiting tool as anything else, right? The good people have an option of where they want to work, but I think most people would rather work somewhere where they're treated well and not just sort of ground down and we need 50 hours a week from you of this much production and shut up and go do it.
Back in the good old days. I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah.
One of the things you kind of hit on it, we're always curious when somebody becomes an entrepreneur, like, you either got to go figure it out on your own, go through the school of hard knocks and get your wisdom through experience, or you find a mentor that may want to help you with that. It sounds like you mentioned you had a mentor when you were in the restaurant business on the management side, but when you made the jump over to doing your own gig, did you have a mentor that kind of coached you with that, or you just had to do it all on your own?
No, I really didn't. In fact, at this point now, there's a handful of accounting firm owners that I talk to where I feel like, our firm is quite a bit bigger than theirs, and they like to run questions by me. How did you figure this out? How did you solve that? And I'm happy to play that role. But when I was doing it, no, I just was kind of making it up as I went along. And I've subsequently found out there's stuff that we've kind of invented because of necessity that other people are like, oh, wow, that's a good idea. I had never thought of doing it like that, but that makes a lot of sense. Like with our bookkeeping, we split the bookkeeping into two teams. We have a new client team and an ongoing team, because what would happen in the early days is we'd have somebody with, a bunch of recurring client work every month. They'd be doing the books. And then we get a new client that would come in and go, I need 3 years of catch up. Well, that would blow up anybody I gave it to, right? They don't have time to do a 40-hour project on top of all their monthly recurring work. So we created our new client department, which was specifically just for catching people up, getting everything together, and then they would hand it off to the ongoing team. And the ongoing team only takes it from that current month and carries it forward monthly. And not everyone, but a good number of people who I've shared that idea with go, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we should think about doing, yeah, and I'm not claiming that I invented that. I mean, I invented it because I hadn't heard of it before. I'm sure there's other people out there who've had the same idea and do things the same way, but it seemed to be a novel idea to a lot of people I've talked to. We just kind of said, this just seems like it makes more sense. The challenge was always, well, clients don't like to get handed from one person to the next. But as long as you kind of set the expectation from day one, look, here's how we do it. We have a new client team. And then when they're done with you, you're going to go to your permanent ongoing point of contact. Set the expectation from day one. And then it's not a surprise when they change people. But that worked really well for us. And we've onboarded as many as 80 clients in a single month without blowing ourselves up, because I think we made that decision. But that was not something anybody told me about. We just kind of came up with it.
Yeah, I think that's the necessity is the mother of invention, right? And if you're with as being an entrepreneur, when your back's against the wall and you got to figure it out and there's nowhere to go, that's usually when the best ideas come out, right? Because you can't go back. There's nobody to talk. You have to figure it out. You got to sit down and grind it out. So that's kind of cool that you could do that.
Well, and the number one thing you hate to do is say no to business, right? So, you don't want to say yes and then do a bad job, but you don't want to say no, right? Here's somebody coming in wanting to pay us money to do work. Well, let me figure out how we can do this without, blowing it up. So, okay, well, what if we hired somebody just to take the new client product? Oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And there we go.
Yeah, the whole if you're evaluating yourself from a psychological standpoint, you would probably be in the psycho range, right? Of doing what you do for a living, right? Like no sane person would choose what you've chosen, but as an entrepreneur, we're like, yeah, that takes total sense. We can do that. It's the craziest thing how you get from A to B as an entrepreneur, right? It's like no, that probably, I don't know, was that even in the manual when you took it in college? That I don't know if
Didn't
it's even
cover
there. They left that out, the real life thing, right? They're like, oh, this is in this fantasy world. Yeah.
So we talk a lot about, and Glenn kind of talked about the journey, but there's always these peaks and valleys, and we always feel like it's always in the valley of where and you always get to the peak, right? Of wherever that is. And you kind of talked about out of necessity and things like that, but is there a valley that you can, as you reflect on your journey that really sets you up for the success that you have now?
Well, I mean, it was definitely a challenge. My goal, once we kind of got past the, okay, we're going to make enough money every month to pay the bills, the next challenge I really wanted to get to was having 10 employees, because I felt like once you get to 10, if you lose one, you only have to split, each person takes an extra 10%. That's manageable, right? But when you only have 4 or 5 employees and one quits, now everybody's workload just went up by 25%, right? If you were kind of at capacity. So I, from the beginning, was just focused on growth to try to get to those next stages. And there were definitely some struggles where you have 4 or 5 people and one of them turns out to be not good. But if you let them go, now you've really overloaded everyone else who is good. So but you don't have enough money to hire a 6th person to take and then, do it. So yeah, I mean, we've been on a pretty solid, steady growth pattern, but there were definitely times, months, and even years where I thought, oh, maybe this is more headache than it's worth. This is a struggle.
It's a nonstop internal monologue all entrepreneurs have. Like, why am I doing this? Well, why wouldn't I do this? Well, why would I do it? And it's just the toughest thing ever. Do you have any over your last journey of doing this iteration that you're in right now? Do you have any like son of a biscuit moments? Like, man, I wish I'd have done that different. I wish I could have done that. Do you have any things that was really impactful that says, man, if I'd have just known that then, where I would be today would be so different. It's not like a regret. It was just like you recognize, like, oh my God, why didn't I know that back then?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we had brought tax in much, much earlier, we would be, double the size at least that we are now. But in the early days, not being a tax or bookkeeping person, I always thought, well, bookkeeping makes a lot of sense. It's monthly recurring revenue, right? The need is perpetual. Tax seemed like a struggle with there's a busy season, everybody works crazy hours, and then after the busy season, it's dead, it's crickets. What do you do with all those folks that you brought in to, you don't want to lay them off, and trying to find seasonal work? So I stayed away from tax for a long time, and in hindsight, it would have been better to learn the tax and bookkeeping side and get it meshed together from the early days. It would have been a lot easier to get my arms around the whole thing. Trying to bring tax in after we had nearly 800 clients, everybody wanted tax. There was no way we could even meet the demand. And it was so busy with the bookkeeping side that tax didn't really get the attention it needed from me until much more recently, where I realized, like, if I don't get in there and figure out tax the way I figured out bookkeeping, we're never really going to be successful at both. So it wasn't a mistake in the sense that, I like, oh, wow, I really screwed that up. But if I had it to do over again, I think the 3rd or 4th person I would have hired would have been on the tax side, and we would have grown those two together instead of trying to do it much more down the road. But, again, you never get it all right.
That sweet sound of the siren of tax. Like, oh, should I do it or should I not do it? Should I do it or should I not do it? And ultimately, when you do it, it's really not that bad. It's really something that completes the whole circle for the client, because you know everything about them, and now you plug it into tax. Now you can advise better on the front end, which is what you finally figured out. But again, how long did it take you to make that revelation?
So we added it in our 7th year.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I also, again, it was frustrating because we'd have people who say, hey, you guys did a great job with the books, but my CPA said they can do the books and the taxes, so I'm going to cancel with you.
Son of a. You hand it to them on a silver platter, and they don't realize the value of it, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, well, we need to stem that, outflow by being, and yes, I mean, we can advise, we can give you a clear, better overall picture if we're seeing both sides instead of just doing the book. So I think it was, there's a certain, I want to specialize. I want to just do one thing really well, but tax and books go together so clearly that I don't think we're not harming ourselves. We're not diversifying too far by having those two in-house.
I think the question we would call that the aha moment, where as an entrepreneur you recognize you have a client, and it's a lot easier to service your client with more options than it is to get a new client. So
Right.
why not just offer more offerings to your current client base, and you can expand that way? And that aha moment hits you, and there you are.
Yeah, no, I think it was always there in the background, but it seemed too risky and too complicated and too much of a management struggle. So, held off. But then at a certain point, you just go, yeah, we need to dive in.
So I'm going to ask you a really hard question.
It's a hard one.
I'm pivoting hard. What is your superpower?
I think my superpower is being good at delegating. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I mean, I talk to thousands of entrepreneurs, get stuck with the idea that I'm the only one that can do this, or I have to make these decisions, or I don't want to let this go. And I think my superpower, as far as being able to grow a business and be a successful entrepreneur who, last year I took 8 weeks of vacation. Um, you can only do that if you build a system and you empower people and you allow them to go and do things that you would normally do. And even if they don't do it exactly the way you do, you don't melt down about it, right? You say, okay, here's what you did. I understand why you made that decision. Here's how I would think about it. And next time I think this is how, you want to think, but you have to be able to let go. Otherwise, you can have a very successful business. You can make a ton of money, but you are, chained to that business for the duration. If you're not able to step back, let things go, bring people in, build systems, and empower people to sometimes screw up or do things the way you wouldn't do it. I've seen emails go out where I cringe. Oh my, I can't believe you wanted, or, advice given or whatever it is, but you just have to bite your tongue and kind of say, okay, well, here's how I would have thought about it. Here's what I would have done. And, next time it comes up, let's see how it goes. But you have to be willing to do that. And I think just a lot of people, the same desire for control, right, that makes us an entrepreneur in the first place, then becomes very difficult to step back from.
And I think to that point is at some point you wanted to do business where you're kind of doing the work, and then you have the light bulb that says, wait a minute, I want to build a business where you're going to be more of an owner investor. And that transition is like, well, I can't do this if I control everything. And again, that's what all entrepreneurs, I struggle with it. Everybody struggles with, like, how much can you give up? Right. But
Right.
when you make that transition, then you get the freedom that you're talking about. So all you entrepreneurs listening, you're going to have that crossroads someday. Choose wisely.
Absolutely.
So what is your end game? You get 8 weeks vacation now. What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. In January of 2022, I promoted two of the women who work in my firm to be the co-CEOs with the explicit plan of being able to step back and focus really just on the growth of the firm, and also have the ability to step away completely from time to time as I wanted to. And so, at some point far down the road, maybe an exit will make sense, but maybe it's different. Maybe it's an employee stock ownership transition, or, who knows? If I think what most people are shooting for is the financial and time freedom, right? So if I get to that, and I feel like I'm most of the way there already, then, suddenly an exit for a big liquidity event doesn't seem nearly as imperative, right? A lot of people build the business to grow so they can exit and have enough so that they're set for the rest of their lives. But if I've got people running the business and there's plenty of cash flow and there's plenty of time, then, an exit is less of a priority. But So I don't know. We'll see. My kids are 14 and 10. So the 10-year-old is 8 years away from being out of the house going to college. So I feel like I've got an 8-year runway to decide, before I have to do anything. And then even then, maybe I just become like the, owner emeritus or something. And I check in a couple times a year and
Yes.
that's
Well,
it.
I love your answer because you really didn't define what that end game is, because there probably isn't one, right? It's really hard to stop when you're in that entrepreneurial journey and you've built something that you've built. It's maybe pivoting and changing a little bit, or maybe, who knows, maybe you go back into owning catering company. Who knows what it is, but I definitely think that itch will always, for whatever reason, be there.
It's like, to me, it's like in climbing a mountain, right? You feel like there's a peak and you get to it, but then you look and there's a higher peak beyond. And it's very hard to say, okay, high enough, I'm gonna go back down. Well, maybe I can make the next
Look at
one.
that.
And you keep going. And that's why Warren Buffett at 93 or whatever he is, right, is still running Berkshire. He still enjoys it, right? If you enjoy it, then it doesn't feel like work anymore.
He doesn't even have a cell phone. I think he has a flip phone maybe, and lives at the same house. But to your point, the great thing about your entrepreneurial journey is you're at that point really probably right now where you have options. And as an entrepreneur, that's what you want. And the options are, you could sell and have a liquidity event and retire and probably do great. Or you could just continue milking this annuity and do great and be actively involved. But the end of the day is, you sitting around doing nothing all day is never going to be a choice. So however you choose, it still might be you step back on this and just have the annuity of it and go start something else. But you have choices. And that's the whole point about being an entrepreneur, is having options. When you're an employee, you don't really have many options. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's the freedom to decide what you want to do next is really the goal that, we kind of all work for. And that's where, it gets interesting. But yeah, I'm not in any hurry to kind of give it up. And it's not really anymore about, making more money. That's nice. But, really, to me, the more interesting goal is, and how big can we get it? How many clients can we serve and help and make, their businesses better? We're at, over 1,000 now. Can we get to 2,000? Can we get to 5,000? And there's always more you can shoot for. So there isn't a clear, like, okay, when I get to X million, or I get to this many employees or something, I go, that's it. That's where I walk away.
No, you're not programmed like that. There's always, like you said, the next client's the next mountain, the next peak, the next peak.
Your answer is exactly what we expected, if we're being honest.
Well done. We sort of trapped you in our psychological trap. So, hey, do you want to, we love you being on the show here. Do you want to give a little plug to your biz and we'll put it out there?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that's, interested in finding out more, CapForge.com has all our info, our services, about our team, and, other appearances and podcast stuff I've done. So yeah, anybody interested is welcome to check it out. I'm always happy to have a conversation. And even other accounting firms, if you want to just kind of share stories and swap ideas and trade, best practices, I'm happy to do that too. Like I said, there's a handful of accounting firm owners that I talk to regularly now, as it is about, trying to all figure out how we can improve. I don't feel like there's so much business out there. It's not competitive. I'm not taking clients from you. You're not taking clients from me. We're all just trying to do a better job serving the clients that we have. And so, yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested.
Glenn's going to have you on speed dial.
Just fun. No, it's just the damnedest thing. Accountants historically never talk to other accountants. Like, that's like sacrilege. You would never do that. But today, why not? Nobody's going to be fishing in your pond. It's fine. There's plenty of work out there. Why can't we elevate the whole profession? Which is really, I think, our mission is, yeah, there's some accounting stuff there, but it's mostly entrepreneurs, but it all ties in somehow. But we're just trying to elevate everybody. And why is that such a bad thing? There's plenty of fish in the pond, right?
Absolutely.
Well, would certainly appreciate you being on the show, Matt. I hope you got up early enough today that you have a very long, productive day instead of a short day. You probably get up cracking noon normally, but now you get to have a full day. So we really, really appreciate it. And thanks again for being on the show. I'm Glenn Harper.
Julie Smith.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That was awesome. Appreciate